This was the most important piece of equipment in the whole of Central Australia. Now spears and boomerangs, they can get kangaroos, but kangaroos can run away real quick. And grasses and seeds and everything can't run away. And if you're someone like Veronica, you can find them, and you can find yolka when there's nothing on top of the ground, eh? There's nothing there, she'll know where to dig and they'll be under the ground. But when you're using seeds, see what we don't realise is, I look at that bloody cabbage over there, is there cabbage there? Yeah, whatever. And it's the most grotesque, cancerous heap of shit plant you've ever seen. You know, a cabbage should grow up with a few leaves, produce flower and seeds, and then die. But we get this poor thing that's been forced to grow all these leaves, and it never even gets around to flowering and seeding, the poor bugger. It's like putting a bloody big eagle in a little cage like this, you know. So, what you have to think of is that all the plants we grow in our gardens are freaks and mongrels.
Nothing wrong with freaks.
Yeah,
I love freaks.
But we've bred over hundreds of thousands of years to be able to lose all their nutrients, right? But produce a lot of sugars and fibre. No, some of them we've bred to produce nutrients. But when to survive out in the desert, it was a lot of hard work, eh? But this was the most important thing. Is, for example, if you're collecting grass seeds, you can knock them into this, and then you can burn them in there if it's the right kind, or you rub them or whatever, and then you yandy out the rubbish. Now, I remember you could carry water in it, you can use it as a shovel. I remember when I was a kid at Hermannsburg, and everybody used to get rations every Monday morning, and then they'd come out with their bag of their sugar for the week, and one of the kids would put their hand in and spill half of it in the dirt. Now, white fellas would not, wasted half of our sugar. Maybe you women just scoop up the sugar in the sand and go boom, 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 and the sand goes that side and the sugar goes that side. And to make the most important thing of all was the resin that you used to put on the end of your spear thrower and make knives and everything else. That was really the most important bit of technology, was this spinifex resin. To get it, you had to use it, and you had to have the women do it for it. So you could go out and spear a kangaroo. And the most important thing you made was an adze, because you needed an adze to make this, and the spears and everything else. So you couldn't make anything without Arrernte and this, you know, so that's the most important thing that we don't recognise. We think of spear and boomerangs and everything as being important. This is number one. Now, medicine. When I was a kid at Hermannsburg, everyone was using the dispensary. We had a nurse there, and everyone would come in the dispensary, and hardly ever using bush medicine. And I thought, what the hell is going on? Now, I'm pretty dumb. It took me ages to work out what happened way back. You see, Australia was an isolated continent. You know, hardly any contact with the rest of the world. And the rest of the world was busy domesticating plants and animals, as I talked about before, producing freaks. I mean, even, you know, the dogs we love, we bred them to stay puppies all their life, you know. They're not real dogs. Real dogs bite you. Anyway, the rest of the world was busy domesticating animals and plants, and especially animals. And quite often you lived above your cows and your pigs and your chooks that were under the house or right next to the house. And most of the worst diseases we've got, TB, chicken pox, TB comes from cows, chicken pox comes from chickens, etc., etc., knocked us to buggery. Because once you start playing around with nature, nature doesn't give anything away for free. And once you start living with animals, you get their diseases. And these diseases, when you're hunter-gatherers, you don't have any immunity to, because you don't have any contact day to day with animals. So we got heaps of diseases. And then here in Australia, isolated, not domesticating animals. As soon as we came along, we brought in all these diseases. And Aborigines had no immunity to them. Same thing happened in South America. You talk about Cortez going through and killing off all the Aztecs. It wasn't the horse and the rifle or sword or whatever they had. It was disease that went in front of them. And exactly the same thing happened here. So you can imagine a mob of Aborigines in Hermannsburg sitting there. Let's go to Dick Kimbush proved that if you were living at Docker River, Pitjantjatjara people living there, the disease came before they even saw the white people. Because what happened is one young fella goes to the railway line when it was just first put in, and he brings the diseases back to his settlement. And no one's got any immune for it. Chicken pox just kill people, etc., etc. And of course, Aborigines had nungaris, usually both man and woman. And what would happen is, as you well know, a lot of our diseases are psychological. So the man would get there and he would, use his hands, and then he'd suck a stone or a piece of stuff out of you and some blood and say, "All right, I've pulled out the thing that has been causing you the trouble." But of course then the women would come along and give them some type of medicine. So if it was just psychologically it was fixed, but if it was other as well, you had both psychological and physically fixed up. But of course along came these strange diseases, and all the good medicines they had didn't work. And that's why when I was a kid, people went to the dispensary and got injections of penicillin and aspros and so on, because the medicines that used to work before white came didn't work anymore. And we needed white man's medicine to fix white man's diseases. Now that went further into the culture, unfortunately, because the Nungaris and the important old women who knew all the medicines and everything lost their power to a certain extent. Same as flour and rice fucked up the women as well. Because when you were going somewhere and you ran out of plain food, it's the women would say, "We've got to move," not the men. There might be still lots of kangaroos out there, but that was unreliable food, and the women would say, "We've run out of yalka and everything else, we've got to move to another place," and the men had to follow, because they knew the women brought. As soon as you bring flour and sugar and rice, it's much easier than going through all the yanding business and everything. I didn't tell you the other thing about yanding. Yeah, I'll tell you that in a second. So that was the two things that broke down Aboriginal society. Well, the three things. Two things that really broke down Aboriginal society initially, along with everything else, but disease that were brought in that they had no immunity to, and that women lost their power in the society. It's very sad. Yanding, the first strike that Aborigines did in Australia, which isn't very well publicised. Everyone talks about the one up at the VRD. But the Aborigines in the Pilbara area west of here were not getting much wages working on the station, so they said, bugger it, we're going on strike. And there's some poor white bloke there called a Scottish bloke who was there looking for minerals and liked Aborigines, and so they grabbed him and said, you've got to look after us as a conduit between the white and us and the white people. And he said, all right, well look, we can make enough living out of getting this rare mineral that I know about. We'll go and camp there and we'll mine this mineral and we'll sell it, and that'll give us enough to pay for food. So he sent off some of the mineral down south to Perth, and they said, sorry, it's too low a grade to be worth continuing with, you'll have to get higher grade. And he'd been watching the women yanding the sea, so he said, oh, I might get the women to try. And so he got the women to yandy this mineral out, and when they sent this next batch down, the people down south says, how the hell did you get such a high grade? We've never had such a high grade. Every other method has never been able to produce such a high grade of mineral. Here's lots of money. So that's how they managed to survive in the first Aboriginal strike on the main grade. Now, are bush medicines, do they work? Or is it just psychological? This thing here is a bracket fungi that grows on decaying trees. This is just an example. It was used in the olden times for teething kids to chew on. You can't eat it, because even the smoke, when you burn the smoke from it, it's not good for you. But you can use it as a teething thing for kids. And the very same thing you buy in the chemist shop is from a very close relative.